Everybody has a story. Everybody has a fishing story.
Well, welcome everybody back to Faith Family Fishing. I am very excited today. I'm nerding out on this person with our guest today, Nancy Dawson. I am so glad you're here. The fact that you're a published author on things that, you kind of have to be a Bible nerd at times, right? It's right. But the fact that you keep people kind of honest, right? We talked a little bit, and we'll get into this a little bit today, like kind of because I had to bring some notes here between what you do and what Wesley Huff does in apologetics, and the way it is. You lay the foundations for the apologetics people to run with them. So before we nerd out too much, go ahead and introduce yourself and kind of what you do.
Well, I grew up in southeast Oklahoma, and just middle-class family. My dad worked at the Navy base. My mom was a typist, and he was a fisherman. And so I have a fish story.
Awesome.
He would take me fishing when I was quite young, but at about the age of 8, he would go in on Lake McAllister. He would get into one of those alcoves and find a really great place to drop a line. And
is this your fishing story?
Yes.
Well, let's wait.
Oh, you have to wait.
We wait till the end. No,
okay.
You don't want to give. You don't want to give.
Don't give that away.
Yeah, that's the dessert. So,
okay.
It'll come to us.
Anyway,
yeah.
I grew up there and ended up going to Oklahoma Baptist University in Shawnee. I was a biology major. I was always interested in
I found that out about you.
Yeah, natural things, the natural world. And so I had a great undergraduate experience. Met my future husband there, Dave Dawson, and so we married, and both of us, he had an assistantship down in Louisiana. And so we went to Monroe, Louisiana, in the northeast part, and ended up, both of us did a master's there.
Is that over there by Duck Dynasty?
I think it's
East Monroe. They're East Monroe.
There, yeah.
Okay.
But north and east. But anyway, I studied under a world famous botanist there. It was just remarkable. And I did a floristic study of a parish for my master's. So I documented all the vascular plants in this parish near Monroe. And so great continuation of my natural interest in biology. And then my husband wanted to pursue a PhD. We moved to San Antonio. He was at the Health Science Center. I was the working spouse, and we had 2 children, 2 lovely children. And so I helped put him through school. Then he did a postdoc. We went to Oak Ridge National Labs and lived in Tennessee. And that's where I commuted to Knoxville and did my doctorate there in cell biology.
Okay, so you're really smart.
I don't know about that. Maybe educated.
You're very educated. That brings up a great conversation I had today with some people. But I would have never thought. So going into this and this whole story thing, I would have never thought Dave had a PhD.
He is a physiologist by training.
Yeah, I mean, because he's such an interesting guy to talk to, and we can go down that rabbit hole very easy. But I think that's what's so interesting about what is learning the backgrounds of different people in the story. So, then you've got your PhD,
right? And he took a faculty position at Ole Miss, and we were there for a while. And then when we moved to Kentucky for his job, according to the mortgage company, I was the trailing spouse, because at the time you don't have a job. But anyway, I did get a job, a faculty position at Western Kentucky University, and I taught biology, botany, cell biology, ran the electron microscope facility, and just had wonderful students, good experience there. And then we moved to Texas. The first time. And we love Texas. Oklahoma is, unless you're in Tulsa or Oklahoma City or maybe Stillwater where OSU is, there's not a lot of academic possibilities, but Texas has lots. And so
people don't realize that.
Wonderful resources here.
My old boss, I used to like to kind of tell him, he lives in Minnesota.
Uh-huh.
And so, always makes fun of, kind of from the South. And I go, we don't like to let you know. I go, but we have IT, we have oil. And so with all of that, just kind of generate everything, there's a lot of money here.
Money, resources, great education.
So you get great education,
right.
Great hospitals. And so it's exactly what you're saying. So,
So we love Texas. So I started an academic appointment up at Texas A&M in the department.
I noticed that there's a lot of Aggies that follow me, and so and maybe our one viewer. I'm gonna go out on a limb now. Our one viewer is an Aggie, so we're gonna say that.
Great people, good students. I was over the imaging facility on the medical school side and did all of their specialty microscopes and just wonderful research on angiogenesis and how, if you have a heart attack, how can you repair things if you have just many different things at the cellular level. What drugs help stimulate epithelial cell growth and all that kind of thing. But I very much enjoyed that job. Then we moved to North Carolina because my husband took another position. And there I had the chance to go to Duke Divinity School, which every place we lived, I always had sort of 1 foot in academics and 1 foot in theology.
Okay.
And I would teach adult Sunday schools and just do lots of things like that. So when we moved to North Carolina, I started a job at UNC, but ended up, I was commuting like an hour one way every day. And I just said, okay, I've got to step back. And I had the chance to go to Duke Divinity School. And it was just so enriching. And we ended up going to Israel one year. And so really that was a transition.
So do you think, I wouldn't call it a setback, but so you're moving, you're going here, you're kind of following Dave, and then you look here and you kind of got to make a decision. Do you think God was definitely pulling you?
I think, if you are a Christian and every day you wake up and go, how can you use me? This is my skill set. And what can I do, to further the kingdom? How can I be a good steward of the gifts that you've given me? And I think every person can ask that question. And to me, it's like pursuing your natural gifts, and then God opens up these doors.
And it could be a little scary too, because you're kind of going out. I mean, a little better than those. Dave's got a job, but you're just like, that helps. But you kind of go off over here,
right,
and because one of the things about the podcast is to teach people there's more than one way to the finish line, right? And maybe there's not a finish line, but there's more than one way to be successful. And I think you opened up a really good thing there about kind of you've got your natural gifts, and then you're asking God, what else can I do? What can I do? And not everybody. Last week we had a great pastor on here, and we didn't talk too much about fishing, but and how his story was to get there. But yours is you went and you started biology, and you're ending up.
Right.
So keep going.
And when I studied botany, I did a lot of plant taxonomy. And so you study things by classification, like kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. So it's very systematic. And I saw that I started just reading through scripture. I had never really done that. Lots of people do, the 1 year reading plan. I
had to do a podcast.
Never done that. Like in some sort of, I'm a very methodical person and systematic, and so I started keeping these if you will, science-like notebooks, but each notebook would be like Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, and so on. And I did that through Old Testament. I started in 2000. I finished Old Testament in 2008, and New Testament in like 2013.
So it took you 5 years to get through the New Testament.
And then I was like taking my handwritten notes, because what I ended up doing was documenting all the genealogies in the Bible. And everyone, when you come to those sections where it's just a bunch of names, you can't make sense of it, no one can make sense of it. And so you have to write it down, and you have to be very accurate in how, but it is a classification, just like plant taxonomy was a classification. And so you have, you know, a
not to interrupt you, but it means something. There's a reason
Absolutely.
that it's there,
Yeah.
and in that order to get it. And so, because like you said, I don't know that I've ever read it, so I'm going back through. I'm kind of listening and reading at the same time. I don't know that I did the podcast. I did the Bible in a year with Father Mike.
Oh, wow.
And it took me 2 years, 2.5. But
That's awesome.
But it takes you kind of through just kind of what you're saying, and then you get to where they're in the Old Testament, where they go through the genealogy, and they do it again. You know, like you said.
Oh my gosh.
And you're what? But the good thing is to have somebody like you to kind of explain why it's important, because I didn't know if I didn't have the podcast on the side, right? Like I was like, what does this mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I've realized at a very early age, you know, kind of my career, that I'm not the smartest guy in the room. But to surround myself with people like you that can tell me stuff, and so that to me, that's one of my.
All of us have those great mentors in our life. Sometimes it's a person in your family. Obviously, it's parents, but it's teachers, like the botanist that I worked under, my PhD professor. She was wonderful. She was the type you would hand her, you know, your synopsis of something you had read, and she would send it back, and she would correct it first in blue, and then you would make the revisions, and then she would do it in red, and then she taught you how to write succinctly.
Wow.
And you have to have those kinds of people to help you order your thoughts.
I remember like it was yesterday. There's Doug Ritzie, right before I got into project management, and you know, I kind of left. So Doug, hopefully somebody will reach out to you. Shout out to Doug. Doug. So I was leading projects, and kind of as a tech lead kind of thing. When I turned a few wrenches in, not many, and so I was leading this, and I'd have to put things in the PowerPoint, but I'd run things by Doug, because Doug was the first, one of the true PMPs, I think, professional project manager. And then I'd send it, he'd rip it up, kind of like just rip it up.
Like,
And which,
I thought that was pretty good, and then they're clearly teaching you.
And but the highlight of my day, and I didn't know at the time, so I handed it to him. I printed it out. Days we still printed things, right? And I handed it over to him. I went to lunch. Hey, Doug, can you look at this? And he come back. And I come back and I get it. I said, Doug, I had this meeting. I go, I needed to know there were no red lines. I said, Doug, I had this meeting. And I said, you didn't even look at it. He goes, no, I did.
I changed it.
He goes, there was no corrections.
Oh, wow.
It was the first time. I was like, it gave me and I think I told him that story once. I said, but it gave me the biggest boost.
Confidence.
And I was like, oh,
right.
And it probably, set me on where, okay, I mean, I've been level, M2s, M1s, managers, managers, but I would say my core strengths in project management. That's kind of where I always, kind of come back to when I, go different things. And he's the one that set me. So I know exactly what you're saying. The red, the blue.
The blue. Sometimes the third revision, I think it was green. But, it's humbling, but this is how you learn. I remember Aaron Laird's interview with you on the podcast. He said, you learn through pain. And that is absolutely true. If there's no pain in your life, you're really not participating with Christ in his suffering. That's what it says, that we suffer with him and then we are glorified with him. And so I feel like there's some sort of mysterious element of, going through this, but you have to push yourself. You have to teach yourself. You have to listen to others, read. I find that in writing one book, I have to read a tremendous number of books because, of course, this is nonfiction. I wish all of it was in my head, but all of that is humbling. And you have to listen to people over you, sometimes younger than you, that just sort of like help explain this to me in a way that I can understand.
I think that's interesting what you said. To write one book, you're reading several dozen.
Oh, yeah.
And so shout out to my partner behind the camera, RJ. As we started doing this, and we had I think I told you about the beta test, but RJ and I watched several podcasts where, I would say probably hundreds, but it's definitely hundreds of hours, right? And just kind of fast forward, what did we like, what did we don't like? We get here, we test the mics, and without that, but it's exactly right. You have to go through. You can't just do one and like, oh, this is the way it's going to be. So no, it's very interesting, like you said, to prep for something, how you really have to train.
What I realized is that what I did in science was a transferable skill in theology, because you're curating material, you're translating material, you are drafting, you're putting these genealogies that seem like so ancillary to the biblical text, and in fact, they're so well preserved. And I saw that thread of, God's hand on all these people that are scribes, that there was one scribe. There's a thing in New Testament manuscripts called the colophon. And this is like a scribal notation. At the very end, after they've copied that whole, New Testament manuscript, and he said, I will be in the grave rotting, but this work that I'm doing, the scroll that I've copied, will be there till the end of the fullness of time, till the fullness of time. And he doesn't even provide his name or anything, but I am sure that writing things down, even if it's for a family genealogy, just a family history, whatever you do, it's meant to help other people. Look at Finding Your Roots. Have you ever watched that show?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. They can do that work because they can go back to written records. That's what you find in the biblical text, is you find a nation, tribes, clans, families, individuals. And within those families, you find all these siblings, or sometimes it's just a father-son kind of linear kind of genealogy, but sometimes it's this expanded genealogy. And you have to have, for me, it was writing it down in a way that I felt like was accurate to what the biblical text was saying.
And I think, that's what I found so interesting with you, right, is that's where the nerd out in me came in, is you did this, but then now it's references to other people. And I remember you told me one time that you were doing this and talking about this. I think you were on a meeting with some people in Israel, right? That you were reviewing this genealogy about what you've done.
Right. You can share it once you have that written down. This reference book turned out to be like 300 family tree charts. So it's all the people from like Genesis, flood people after.
And by the way,
flood.
we're talking about anybody that can see this. This is her first book, right? All the genealogies of the Bible, visual charts.
Exegetical
commentary. That's the word of the day. And so this is what we're referring to that she actually published.
Zondervan Academic. Zondervan is a very fine Christian publisher, and their academic division was very interested in this. So after I finished, it was about literally like almost 2 decades worth of research. Because at the time when you're doing it,
you don't realize.
You don't know if there is going to be a publish. You don't know in what form it will take. And I'm so thankful for the people there, because in-house they have skilled editors and, but a very fine acquisition editor will know, oh, this has merit, this has value, we should publish this. But even getting it into a form, because some of the genealogies are very large, so how do you get that on a page? And so
you had smart people.
yeah, it's all the people that you're like, I can't do that, but somebody can.
See,
just
RJ,
like you're saying.
This is where this is why we're like this.
Yeah. So I very much appreciate that technology side. So each one of us brings a certain kind of passion, which I think is wonderful. To me, I heard Aaron Laird say this, a calling. And I felt that calling when I was at Duke Divinity School. I was taking classes, but I was looking for a book kind of like this in the library, and I could not find one. And so the Holy Spirit kind of works with you in a progressive way. And then you realize, I was supposed to write that, but I had no idea it would take that long to figure out. But then it's like, oh my gosh, I'm very proud of it in that
Absolutely.
sense, to kind of, that you see that God is not just or Christ isn't just your Savior, He's also the person that sustains you through the work. That's a great revelation, that you don't have to have it all figured out on this day or the next day. You just have to follow the light that is in front of you. Just the next step. Just the next step. Just the next step.
There's a saying in project management of how do you eat an elephant?
Yeah.
One bite at a time. Right. And that's kind of what you did. You just, and even today in agile project management, you break it up into several small steps, and you take your wins. Yeah. And we'll talk about this a little bit, and I'll go back to it a little bit, but now you're working on what I found is a very interesting book, right? And I think ladies and men will be kind of proud of it, but so tell us about that book.
Well, after I got this done, I go to a meeting called the Evangelical Theological Society meeting. It meets sometimes in California, sometimes on the East Coast, sometimes in Texas, and there, people give papers. So it might be a pastor, it might be a seminarian, it might be people that are students that are giving papers, but they're all theology papers. But the bottom floor of that conference center, they have publishers from all over, Christian publishers, very good Christian publishers, and you can talk just like I'm talking to you, face to face with an acquisition editor. And the guy that had extended the offer for this book had changed to another publisher. It's called Broadman and Holman. And he said, this turned out so well. Would you think about doing one on all the women of the Bible? And I love that topic. I love everything about it. So again, I'm doing the biblical research for that. It's about 350 women, named, unnamed, and symbolic women. And it's very fascinating Old Testament, New Testament characters. And what I see with the women, women are just kind of coming into their own socially in an acceptable way, as co-workers. My mom always worked, but a generation before that, my grandmother stayed at home. She, cooked, cleaned. Okay, that is a few generations removed, but now we expect our kids to go to college, to be educated, to hold jobs and a well-paying job and all of that. And so times have changed. And what I see in the biblical text is that this would be the key. Even within a patriarchal society where it's very male-dominated, Scripture elevates this position of women. They do these remarkable things.
Absolutely.
Even under that umbrella. And so Israel's history may be going along and it's taking a downturn. And what I always see is there will be a story about a woman in that dip. And through her faithful choices, then there's a change. And so there's more covenant faithfulness to God after that woman. Now, that's not exclusive. But
No,
many, there's Jezebels or
well, I think,
Athaliahs.
but there's also bad guys in the Bible, right?
Sure.
So yeah, you're right.
It's not shy about telling you about the character qualities, but there's usually a comment about, this was a righteous king, this was an unrighteous king, and the same for the women. And so, again, you can document it. And
I think that's what I found very, being the father of a daughter. I think it's very important to hear these stories because, like you said, whether it's kind of a patriarchal society, you're like, well, we're keeping women down. Not necessarily, right? I always kind of say, talk about roles, roles in the family and what they're expected to do. And she's now today's actually her birthday. Happy birthday, baby! And so
happy birthday, Ella.
She. To understand, so we've even talked about boys. And I said, what's the first thing? She goes, dating's come up. And I read a really good book, Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters. I suggest it to any dad that has a daughter. It's a great book. But one of the things I said, what's the first thing? If you're going to date, you're going to get married, what's the first thing you do? Does he believe in Jesus? I go, we start there. And then if you get that answer, then right now, does he get good grades? Does he have any activities? But your first thing is, do they believe in God and do they believe in Jesus? Then that's a litmus test for her, growing up, and to learn that. I think that's why I'm just kind of fascinated that there are great stories, really. But I think that's an easy one because there's others, and until you go through the whole Bible, you don't really.
And you don't always have father figures that, act consistently above board. There's like David, or Jacob had a daughter, Dinah, and David had a daughter named Tamar that is raped by the half-brother. There's a lot of deep issues to deal with, and the fathers don't always act appropriately. Many do. But I think that's why I like Scripture. It's an honest look. It's not just telling you the cream on things or what you want to hear.
No, I think you're right. I've never heard it really put that way. Is you're exactly right. It's an honest look of men and women, good and bad, good kings, good, and everything. And then, how do we strive to be better, right? And we have that perfect, that's why I think 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel is probably when I'm having bad times. And and I think I said it on the last podcast, that I'm a hypocrite. I have to start over every day. Like today, I know today I've sinned. I'll start over tomorrow. Ask for forgiveness today and ask forgiveness tomorrow, because we all fall short of God's glory, right? And so there's
a kind of grace that is given because we're people, but we are a covenant people, and God promises that where His people are, He is going to be with them. And the Holy Spirit imbues us to sort of be the best version of ourselves. It's not just in our own power. It's, every person that you probably listen podcasts to, there's any Christian person, it's like there's sometimes what you would call this element of luck that got them to where they are. But, for a Christian person, you think of it as that was a providential moment. In God's sovereignty, He brings this person or this event into your life. And those are things that you don't have any control of. So the things that you have control over, that's what, that's what you're responsible for. And so somehow it's mysterious, but it's lovely.
What kind of turned on me, and I didn't want to, like I said, we had to stop ourselves before the call, so we wouldn't, before the podcast started. But what I found, and I think I turned you on to Wesley Huff. I know I turned Aaron on it. Pastor Aaron was on before, and what I found is apologetics, right? And what we talked about it, and we can kind of explain what that is, because I don't know if I do a good job, but it's not what it sounds like.
I'm making an apology for being. No, it's to give a defense of your faith. Give an honest statement about your experiences, like you're saying. I'm a hypocrite, or I was, I did this, but to change, that's the
and
that nature.
And apologetics is getting kind of a new life to, and so, and I think what you do is a great. We talk inputs and outputs, right? And I said I just started. I think I turned you on to Wesley Huff and various things, and great. Would love to be able to meet Wesley face to face, but I think what you're doing, looking at kind of how you support, who reads your books. This is great work into the supporting of apologetics.
Right. Well, it's to simplify. What I saw, you see all these names. It's like, why is this even in the Bible? Why would that be there? But it was preserved over time so that basically we can find it. And so you're trying to simplify those very complex family trees and the filial association.
So you're in AI. I looked it up, and so what AI said about you is that you provide the map, and Huff and the other apologetics provide the terrain.
I think of them as much more like probably in tune with the modern culture or the pop culture, the issues of the day, things that your daughter and my grandkids are going through. I see what I try to do is just provide this real strong, broad foundation. This is how you understand these people. This is how they're related to one another. These are their ancestors. These are their descendants. And I provided like I just take it like in the Bible, Genesis through Revelation, and then each chart, if you will, is like, let's say it's genealogy of Abraham. And so then you see, his, how did I come up with that family tree? And so I put all the scripture verses that I use to support that. And then I had two great people, one an Old Testament scholar and one a New Testament scholar, and myself wrote an exegetical commentary. This is sort of like, why is this important? Why do we need to understand Abraham?
You were providing feedback on different or different Bibles, right? Is that what you were doing?
Not different Bibles. It's just I use the NIV translation.
Okay.
Every translation, in a sense, is an interpretation. So I'm making an interpretation of what the NIV is saying the associations are. But I'm not using different manuscripts like a Greek Old Testament.
What I found interesting, and I didn't know this, and through Huff and probably yourself, is when you get a new translation, you're not like you're doing the NIV. It didn't get translated from
the original.
It goes back to the Codex Sinaiticus.
Right. It was found at St. Catherine's Monastery. I've never been to Egypt, but that's a place I would have loved to have visited. It's at the base of where the law was given to Moses at Mount Sinai, and it's a place where there's been preservation of lots of text. And so Codex Sinaiticus is the Greek translation of the Old Testament and the New Testament.
Okay.
And so were certain centers, if you will, the Codex Vaticanus, which is at the Vatican now. There's a Codex Alexandrinus, and it was from Alexandria. So these are like places where there is, major thought centers going on. And so they copy those manuscripts. This is like somebody like doing an altar cloth, and they're working on these 5 inches of, gold embroidered something or another for this church. And this is what they've done for years, just that small bit. And it's amazing that there were multiple scribes, but not like hundreds, not 50, not 20, but a few scribes that were so careful in how they copied. And so like Sinaiticus, I think, is from around the 300s, 350s. And so we are getting way back to the originals. We haven't found any this was written by John the Apostle.
Right.
There's nothing like that. But it's amazing that there's hundreds. And there's a place up in Dallas called the Center for the Study of New Testament Manuscripts.
Okay.
And the guy that started that maybe 20 years ago was Dr. Dan Wallace. They're doing wonderful work. So they go all over the world, especially to Europe, to monasteries, and they find these New Testament Greek manuscripts, and they're digitizing those because many of them are in moldy, wet conditions, and they're falling apart. The bindings, can barely flip the pages, and they're digitizing all of that. And that way, they're putting it up for free on their website, csntm.org, and anyone that can read Greek can go there and compare. Well, this manuscript says this for John 3:16. It says this for John 3:16 in this other manuscript. Which one has the words that are closer, you think, to the original? I don't do that. I took a Greek class, and wow, that was a little over that was just a year and a half ago. I think I'm beyond, I don't know, some stuff just doesn't go in anymore.
Well, that's why you got AI.
Yes, and you have resources like that. And so we are inundated with resources, and yet we don't always know where to go to find the information.
Well, and I think what's really good, kind of the data that you're laying out, but then there's those people, and you see those different writings, because I've spent hours kind of watching the different channels, and when a new one comes up, then they go back and they'll have people start translating it. Right. Is this real? Does it make sense? And does it go back, and they use Sinaiticus, Vaticanus, right, to say, because sometimes somebody wrote, just like today, somebody would write something.
It's
that was wrong. There's no way, because they can go back, but by the language that they use, they can tell what century it came from, and saying, well, no, this couldn't be correct. So it's a great historical.
It was like the Dead Sea Scrolls when those were discovered in the 1950s. It's a shepherd boy looking for his lost goat or something, and he throws a rock in a cave, and the clay jar breaks, and they think the Essenes, there was the Pharisees, Sadducees, and Essenes. These are sects of Judaism at the time, and the Essenes had left Jerusalem. They went down to the Dead Sea area and formed that Qumran community. And they were so pious and so vigilant and accurate in copying the scrolls. And so when you have 70 AD, when the Jerusalem temple is destroyed, they're down there, and they're kind of fleeing for their lives, and they save these scrolls. It's like us rolling up an altar cloth or something that would represent a true treasure from your family or something, like a photo album. If your house was burning, what would you want to save?
That's a good way to look at that.
And so their lives were at stake, but they preserved those scrolls and they put them in these big clay jars. They have one that is down at the Lanier Theological Library. I don't know if any of your listeners are.
We got one listener.
We have lots of subscribers, but you can go to that library and see one of those real clay jars. That library is a theological library. You cannot check books out, but you can go, and it is so awesome. I don't know, 300,000 copies of books, books on theology. And it is a premier library in the whole world, and it's right in Houston.
That's
it's
awesome.
Right off of 1960, right by where the Methodist Hospital is on the feeder road of 249.
Yep, exactly.
It's right in that area, and you can go, and they offer classes, they offer lectures, and if you're interested in faith-type issues, they have scholars, and I'm talking about top scholars from all over the world that come and give lectures.
Top people. Top people.
Scholars. And
that's Raiders of the Lost Ark.
It's right here in Houston.
That's awesome.
It is awesome.
And
so I go down there and use that library, and the director is
What would you tell? And I think you kind of hit on it earlier, and tell anybody, young people going through life changes, what would you tell them, to just advice? What advice would you get, as whether you're starting out or you're going through a change, what advice would you tell those people?
I just see that God uses all your gifts, and so you need to look long and hard. What are my gifts? Do I like to be around people? Am I kind of nerdy and like doing details? Do I like to, am I a pharmacist kind of person that wants to work with the public a little bit, but not all the time? Am I much more of a marketing person? I love people. I'm gregarious. I love to talk. You really have to know yourself. You have to know how you're made up. And then I would say, don't look at your peers and what you don't know or what you can't do. You have to be, or this is what I try to do, is you have to be self-disciplined. That is the best kind of discipline. And the sooner a young person learns that, they're not competing with others in their class. You're only, David Lindwall, the pastor that you interviewed, he gave a sermon one time and he called it the worship of one. The worship of one. You only have to know that you are giving your best to God. And it may be good or bad relative to other people. And so I would just say rely on, the people that you know. Always be open. But I feel like there's prayer, and that's you usually, or in my case, I guess I should make it personal. You're usually asking God for something. But when you study Scripture, that is God speaking to you.
To you.
This is a great, this is the feedback. He's telling you things.
I tell Ella, one of the things, she's in golf. One of the things I tell her is that we don't care about winning or losing. Is if you go out there and you've practiced, but you've got to put in real practice, and you go out there and you win, that's great. But if you go out there and you lose, but you've practiced and you gave it your all.
Yeah,
because one I think one of the things I'm getting her out, try to get her out of saying is, well, I tried. Well, we can all try.
Yeah.
Okay, we could all try.
Level.
Yeah. I go, but were you prepared?
Right.
And there will be failure. I go, but and so it's you're not playing the other people. You're playing the course.
Right.
You're playing the course that day as it is. And I think, and so it's been really, ups and downs, but, we're seeing this in her, getting her to practice a little more. That's kind of the.
I think, being a parent, it's humbling. You can't,
Yeah.
you can't take all the accolades for the things that you do, that they do well. It wasn't like, oh, they're taking after me. Nor can you say they're acting up and then that's my fault. It's like,
Some of that might be my fault.
we're all kind of a product of our experiences, but we don't have to make the same mistakes that our parents did. My dad was an alcoholic.
Mm-hmm.
That was a really tough time, but my mom was kind of from German background and very high work ethic, and I would say, I take after her in a lot of ways, but then my other natural love of nature and all that, I get more from my dad. He was a great guy when he was not drinking, but life is not just at the end of problems. It's all of that.
How do you deal? And that's what like you said, I take some things after my mom. I take some things after my dad, and I'm sure Ella will do the same. But trying to teach her that process,
Right.
And I go is because I can't teach you everything. You've got to know how to learn. Right. And so, all right, we're at that stage. Had to cut you off a while ago. I'm glad you were able. I'm glad that you thought about it. I'm going to pick on. I'm going to pick on Aaron a little bit. It was really a boating story.
What?
It was really more boating than it was fishing.
Boating
so
story.
it's still kind of funny. But I know Aaron has lots of. So we're going to have to bring Aaron back so we can get a really good fishing story. So it kind of re-encompasses, and we talked a lot of faith today, and I think that's great. And we want to, but what in different things. But as I kind of said is, I think faith is something we give to God. God gives us to do, and it kind of wraps everything that we do all day. The good and bad is kind of the faith. But what I found is, and RJ can claim this because he's been doing it now too, is fishing is that thing that links us within that. It links everybody one way or another. And so we've heard your story. Tell us your fishing story.
Okay. Mine is very minor, I guess, but maybe when I was like 8 or 9, and probably before I became a Christian. I became a Christian at 9, but my parents didn't have me for like 10 years. They had trouble. My mom had trouble getting pregnant, and so when they finally had a child, they were very much lake people. My dad went fishing all the time. He was a big bass fisherman, and so when I was quite small, I had the little life jacket and I was on the boat. But as I got a little older, he would be in like an alcove of the lake, real nice place, doing the line, and I was so wiggly. I was just, I don't know whether I didn't have the temperament then or what, but I would just go, will you let me off? Will you take me over to the edge, and I'm going to go look around for plants and animals and lichens and whatever else I could find, and flowers, and then come back and get me. And my dad did that, and I was just always naturally interested in the natural world, and I thank him for that. I wasn't probably ever a
So
good
fishing
fisher.
led you to biology.
I would say that biology, no, I wouldn't put it like that, but I would say it was what do they call that? Mingled with fishing, because fishing is being in the outdoors. It's appreciating God's creation.
Yep.
And so I think you can find solitude, you can find wonder, mystery, you can find just, I don't know, we would have great fish fries. My mom would, he would clean all the fish that he'd bring in, clean them in the sink and all that. But we had some great fish fries. And so fishing sort of led back to an activity that you're doing in one place, but then you sort of end up with the meal and the family and another story. And so it's a great feedback loop too.
Well, it is. I mean, it brought us closer, me and you, because back when I was trying to do a little tournament bass fishing, never was really good. We went to your pond, and I taught Ella some things there. And the fish, if our one viewer is a fisherman, they'll get this reference. I taught her how to flip, and it's a certain way to throw your bait in certain situations. And we went right after that. We went to a tournament on Lake Fork, which is the premier lake in the country. And she was using that technique, and she was 1 inch. And Lake Fork is a slotted lake, meaning you could keep fish up to a certain length, and then this here, then you can take on. Then it goes up to like 22, 24 inches. Then it kind of starts over. And so she was in the youth division, and she was using her technique, and was about a 1.5, almost 2 inches too big to turn in it for the it was right on close to the line. I said maybe it's closer than that, but she would have won her division if we could have put that fish in the boat or taken it to there. So, but it brought us, and then the fish fry. We go out there, when I can, to pull in a few fish is exactly that. It brings us together,
Right.
And all of that.
So I think just pointing people to their natural interest. Winston Churchill, I think he was in India, and he said to his mother, he's writing back to her, and he's saying, send me the books. He had certain books that he read. And it's the same with Paul. Send me the scrolls to Timothy. And so you don't have to read everything. You have to be selective about what you read. And let that develop. Be your own personal trainer. Try to strive for excellence. If you don't, we all fail some, but making a concerted effort to get better, study hard, and be on time, and show up. All the things that
You have to do.
you have
Be
to
successful.
do. So,
Well, thank you. I had a great time nerding out with you. It's one of the things, and I hope it reaches some people that kind of does it. So thank you for coming on. And as you get closer to the book, I want you to bring it back and tell us where you're at. And so I hope everybody likes and subscribes as we get this thing kicking. We appreciate it, and have a great evening.
thank you.
The Bible contains hundreds of genealogies that fulfill many different purposes, but the significance of these genealogies can be difficult to grasp. In this book, Dr. Nancy Dawson visually presents every genealogy in the Bible, 600 pages, providing an essential guide to biblical understanding of chronology, lineage, history, and culture. This broadcast is by no means sponsored by this book or financially motivated to even sell the book. It's just a fantastic tool and reference, whether it's in your own personal walk with God or group studies or even at your own local church. So check it out.